One thing that I believe that it is beneficial to do and that a lot of people don't put much stock into is to look into the different aspects of personality types, to look into the different aspects of typology and typological systems and see where you are within that. Take the test, take your big five, right? Take your Enneagram, take your Myers-Briggs typology, and fuck it. Sometimes maybe even check your astrological signs, because it doesn't automatically mean that it's going to be accurate, right? But in a lot of instances, if you study it and see enough similarities where there are consistencies between these types and signs and all these different caricatures and aspects of trying to boil down different types of individuals, sometimes you'll realize that you're not as different as you think you are, right? Which is good for people who may think that they're very different. But another aspect of it is that sometimes there will be thought processes and patterns that other people who had a similar thought process or way of thinking and being to you, that they've already come across dilemmas that you can have or will come across, right? Maybe even are currently going through, and they may have solutions based off of a similar thought process to you, right? Like based off of your internal value system and the way that you make decisions. If someone gives you a good answer or a good solution, if they go through a completely different thought process to get it, it may be something that's incongruent with what's going to feel real to you or feel logical. Because there's different types of intelligences, right? Like there's the multiple intelligences, right? That's a theory that I like a lot. So for me, I went through mine, and from time to time I go on YouTube and I watch videos about them, or I go on certain forums and see what people have to say about different topics. I am a INTJ, and I am a Enneagram 5-wing 4 SX. I'm a Scorpio sun, Leo moon, Scorpio rising. It's double Scorpio. And what else? That's mostly what I get into. Know your attachment styles too. Now I don't want to talk too much about my own personal attachment styles, right? But I do like to study some of attachment theory and different things along the lines, right? It's good to know sometimes what you rank highly in and what you rank lowly in, so that you know some of your strengths and you know some of your weaknesses. And if you're a self-aware person, you're already keeping track of these things to the best of your abilities, but sometimes there's things you don't see. And by being made aware of the different aspects, it's a lot easier to go through that process of, like, if you're a person who didn't know yourself ahead of time, there's nothing wrong with that, man. Not a lot of people take as much time to get to know themselves on a very deep level, right? If you're a person who needs to take some time to get to know yourself more, sometimes it benefits to go through these things. I remember plenty of times I would listen to videos on YouTube about like an Enneagram and studying some of the different types, but mostly my own, right? And it started off with just the fives, listening to videos like Richard Rohr breaking down the fives. And sometimes you'll hear relationship dynamics like he said he's seen way more fives with twos than he thought. And he started listing in detail and things that can occur within a relationship. And he said typically it occurs within the 3-year point. And I'm like, man, I was pretty accurate to my shit, because I was in a situation just like that. The 5 with the 2. But then I'll go deeper into it, into the wings. And it's like, when I went deeper into it, into the wings, then it got to 5-wing 4. Now, I got to explain a little bit about the Enneagram in case people don't know about the Enneagram. So with the Enneagram, you have 9 different types. I don't remember them all off the top of my head, right? But I remember a few of them. But for me, I was an Enneagram 5, and that's the observer, right? Like, one thing you'll notice is that I come up with a lot of overarching worldviews and ideologies, right? That's how I've dealt with a lot of things in my life. And I'm a person who looks at the idea of overthinking as kind of gaslighting at times and a little bit unrealistic. Because to me, if I overthink about something, typically I will find a solution. So to me, I just see that as planning, or to me, I just see that as my deliberation process. Because for me personally, I'm also an empath, so I'll take time and I'll try to place myself within the emotions of a person I create in my mind, or someone I know personally, in different situations, to see what's the best way to feel about a situation. Because although I'm a 5, I have a 4 wing, which means that I'm a very passionate feeling individual who likes to think a lot about the idea of self, right? I'm an artist. I'm a music producer. I'm a content creator. You see, I'm a content creator because I'm making content right now. And I'm in love with art. Art is beauty to me, but I'm also a philosopher. I'm in love with philosophy. I'm in love with psychology. I'm in love with taking these deeper dives into myself as well as other people. It's just something I very much enjoy. And part of that process is what got me into being into BDSM. Because a lot of that for me came out of, you look up this stuff online, something called empath supernova. I was encountering things that were somewhat negative. Now, I didn't go through some super crazy experience like a lot of guys who go into the red pill. It wasn't even like that for me. It's just I was thinking about shit. And through my thinking about things, I started to see some inconsistencies in what society says versus what reality is. And when I went through empath supernova, I started to experience the pleasure that another person experiences being dominated. And I started to empathize with it. So it's kind of like the pleasure that I would give would be something that I was able to feed off of to a certain extent. So it really wasn't about my pleasure. All right, I was never really a pleasure-seeking type of guy like that. I more so liked to empathize with the pleasure that I was giving to someone else. But what I also realized along that way was times where, let's say, I got ignored or I got ghosted when I was younger, maybe high school shit, right? And how much emotional turmoil that would send me through. But when I experienced this longing, this limerence, right? To me, later on, I realized that, man, I would think about, man, if I woke up, I go to sleep and hope I get a text message in the morning type of shit, right? And then you realize that if you actually wake up to that text message when you really desire it, it's going to mean more to you than if it was just somebody who was talking to you on a regular basis. Right? Now, I didn't really like that for me. So I got out of moving in ways where I feel that way. Right? I started working on my mindset, working on understanding womanese, understanding text game, so that I could pretty much read an individual's energy through text messages and through deciphering what somebody's really saying by what they're saying when they post what they post on social media. So a lot of my clients who come to me for like sex and dating coaching, part of what I put them on is different aspects of crafting an online identity that is as close to the real you as possible, but highlighting the true attributes about yourself, of things that you're into, things that you really believe, having the capacity to say certain things in a funny way that touch on things that also include your sexuality, and just doing that in a way to be able to attract women online, because to me, it's not an either or type of situation. You can go meet women out and about. You can meet women on apps, dating apps. You can meet women online. You can meet women through your social groups. You can meet women through word of mouth. There are a lot of different ways to meet women. right? I don't think you have to choose one or the other. So I say, man, add that online shit to your repertoire, because it's probably going to be easier to find women who are already into things that you're into. And also, you save time. Not all the time, but sometimes you save time, because without putting too much energy directly towards the woman, just the way that you portray yourself, and make sure that it's honest, it's true, make sure you move that way. But you can attract women sexually to where when you have that conversation with them, they're already prepared for that. They're already into that. And you can just pretty much move from a short conversation in the inbox to getting it popping, you know. But that's a different thing. See, I'm a sexual subtype, right, of Enneagram 5. So it's like a 5-wing 4SX. So you hear how there is that desire to engage, you know, that desire to understand things, but also a person recharging their battery, right, through interactions that are intimate, meaning one to a small group of people. That's the sexual subtype. You know, I'm not super into just going out and being around a whole bunch of people all the time. I don't trust people like that. And one of my biggest things is energy conservation. I try to make sure that I don't put out too much energy in my interactions that take me to a place where I feel a little bit drained or depleted. So for me, I limit that. Unless it's something I have to do, like for work, right? But at the same time, the goal in my mind is always the self-actualization of doing things that create a good balance of things that energize me, with a low amount of the things that deplete my energy. So what do? I craft my theories. I do coaching sessions. I go online. I post content. And I'm realistic that it takes time for certain things to grow. It takes time. Not for everybody, but for me. So I do make some money with these things. I'm not at a position to do it with AdSense yet, but there's times where I post videos and people just send me money because they appreciate it, or people will find me online and we'll do coaching sessions, or I'll get referred coaching sessions sometimes by women I used to deal with. They'll refer me to a new guy that they're dealing with, because when the program is solid, you know, competence is something that's very important to me. So it would be dating and sex coaching, that too. And I also do boxing coaching. So you see me post boxing videos on here too. This Coach Brody. Like, I was a coach when it came to boxing before I was a coach when it came to this dating and relationship shit and sex stuff. So in my experiences, like, let's say when I was boxing, I enjoyed putting hands on people, and I wasn't too unhappy about getting hit. It was just like, you know, I'm not gonna make it easy for you to hit me, but I don't mind getting hit. It just comes with the territory. You don't take it personal. It just is what it is. But I was a mean fighter in the ring. But although I loved boxing the way I did, go in there, work hard, became the best boxer in my gym for a period of time, even though we had professionals. And I was an amateur. We'd go to other towns, either do amateur matches or go have some sparring sessions with some pros. Stuff like that was what really was therapeutic for me, but it was a way of integrating my mind into something I can do with my body. And that's another reason why I really love sex, because especially when you can mix the mind, the body, and the emotions into what you're doing, then it becomes something that feels more self-actualizing, and it's something that feels more like you are expressing yourself on a very honest and a pure level. The good, the bad, and all that shit, right? And that's kind of where the 4-wing comes in at. And the sexual subtype as well, because you notice things that I'm into are mostly one-on-one activities. I've never been into team sports. I've only liked individual sports. So I was into MMA and I was into boxing. You know, I liked karate and taekwondo when I was younger, but I didn't get too far into it. But I love the boxing because when I'm in the ring, it's just me and this other person. It's more intimate. I don't have to worry about a bunch of different people at one time, right? And just the way my mind works, the 5 in me would just be obsessive over gaining information about something that interests me. So I would study and study and study and study and study, watching videos in my off time. I had a coach, but I was so focused on learning that my coach rarely ever had to teach me anything. If he did, I was definitely open and willing to learn. But I put so much time and energy into training myself, even when I wasn't at the gym, that it's rare that people really had to tell me shit. That's just the truth. But when they did, I would listen. But then there will also be times where somebody may tell you something when you're in the ring and it don't work. And that's something that can create a bridge in trust. And then you kind of learn to just trust yourself. Like, for all of my boxing matches that I had, my main coach did not show up. And I didn't take it personal. He didn't really show up because, you know, he's been a coach for a long time and he couldn't really stomach the idea of seeing people getting hurt, especially his own fighters, because he's seen fighters get hurt before. So sometimes he just couldn't handle it. He was an older man in his 60s, right? But I came up in the old school trainer style, you know, hot ass gym, old bags, smell like hand wraps in there. You know what I mean? It's hot. You get in there with whoever you got to get in there with. You're going in, you're working, but you're also taking a lot of time to drill techniques. And nobody had to tell me to take that time to drill techniques. I'll take my own time and drill techniques. Rounds at a time, maybe focusing on one punch. Then also doing a lot of studying. Like there's the sweet science, right? It's just a passion of mine. But it's really about that place where as a 5, your integration point is to 8 within the Enneagram. So that's more so like the challenger or the leader, right? Someone who's a little bit more direct. When you're a 5, typically you hide away from the world through receding into your own head. When you're in your head, you have opportunities to craft great ideas and ideologies and systems, to develop systems that make you feel more comfortable operating within the everyday world, right? Like all the things that I talk about with women, for the most part, were things that I've done myself or things that I've saw and observed, had conversations about, and things that fit within the narrative of the ideology that I'm speaking of to maintain a certain level of consistency. That's what I speak on, right? So when I look at things from that perspective, it's a matter of taking those ideas, those worldviews, and translating them in the pleasure of being a 5, especially a 5-wing 4, at times is when you can take these worldviews, take these systems that you've developed in your mind in order to deal with the world, and then to kind of work like a slingshot. It's kind of like you're hanging back for a while. Everybody's moving ahead. You see them moving ahead, but you're planning something. And then when you pop out, you jump ahead of the people who were moving ahead of you before you were moving forward because of the thought that you're willing to put into things. But you still have to launch. You still have to put yourself out there. You still have to put yourself in a position to see how true your ideas are. And once you get comfortable with that, then oftentimes you have a cheat code to certain things. And for me, I was like, you know what? I want to take this. Originally, when I started getting into working in game and dealing with women and these different aspects of things, some of it, believe it or not, really came from some of my spiritual study as a Christian, as a believer, as an Israelite, right? Some of it came from there, but a lot of it really came from feeling like I wanted to have something to teach my sons or teach my sons and daughters. Like when I get older and I have children, I don't want to have them out here if they were not as lucky as I was, you know, because I wasn't in a fucked up position with my dating and relationships necessarily. You know, I had the woman that I loved, right? So that's a little bit different than other people. But I was also honest when there were changes that I wanted to make and things I wanted to do. And I didn't mince my words in about any of that shit, right? But at the same time, the way dating in the relationship scene is right now, you need some game. You need to understand what's going on out here, because what people say isn't always what they mean. Even if they mean it, it's not necessarily what it means according to your bottom line of what it is that you're trying to do, what it is you're trying to accomplish. So you have to be able to see through the bullshit. And I wanted to have some game that I could share with my future children. But also just to have some rules and guidelines for myself about what it is that I will and won't tolerate, what it is that I do like, what I don't like, knowing how to teach what I like in case I meet somebody who's willing to learn, but not already having certain skills. You know, these are things that I focus on, and I wanted to say, let me kill multiple birds with the same stone. Like just like I said earlier about how I'm very big on energy conservation, I would say, okay, let me use this ideology to influence some of my music, to give me a framework to write songs through, to craft a persona or ideology that can be pushed abroad. And I'd say, okay, let me get all the different things that I like and care about. Let me take time finding out how to integrate these ideas into my music in a way that doesn't feel disjointed, because part of it is, a little bit of it is gospel, right? Because I'm a believer. But I also talk about things that a lot of people who are gospel would not like. So yeah, I talk about sex. I like to make baby makers. I do, because sex is something I like. It's something that's important to me, and it's something that I feel like people need to know more about. I feel like a lot of relationships would be better if people had better sex with the person who actually treated them well. That's just the truth. That's something I believe, right? That's something that just sticks in my head. Like if you had somebody who genuinely cared for you and loved you and wanted to be with you and who was down for you, right? They were genuine. If you had a great sex life with them as well, then chances are you will have a better chance of maintaining that relationship. That's just something, I feel like there's often this bridge between the two, where it's like the person who treats you like shit in most people's eyes is the toxic person with the good D, the good P, you know what I mean? It's different things like that. So I wanted to work against that ideology and to try to change some things and the narratives around that. And that's a lot of why I do what I do too. Another thing was, how about I find a way to try to generate money with this, since I put so much time and thought and effort into it. So I'm like, okay, cool. People started asking me for advice, and I give them advice, and then they'll start paying me when the advice worked. So I'm like, all right, cool. Boom, I like this. You know what? I started doing that, started coaching. That's how I started coaching. A lot of times my friends, sometimes people much older than me, sometimes people a little bit younger than me, but it's all in love. It's all in good spirits. And I enjoy going through that process of placing myself in someone else's worldview, and someone else's mindset, and someone else's position, and using my way of thinking to think myself, like overthink for them. And I've already thought of so many scenarios, ins and outs of scenarios, that I can put myself in their shoes and think my way out from their position. Right? And that's an intimate thing. It takes trust to do that. But it's one of those things where that's where the empathy comes in at. Right? Just being an empath, feeling people's emotions. Like, I can put myself in a scenario in my mind, mentally, and empathize with the way that person feels within that situation, to the point where sometimes it could even be painful for me. But I've kind of learned to relish the anguish of uncomfortable truths. Right? I've kind of learned to relish in the anguish of that. So, you know, my taste in entertainment, I'm a really big anime guy. Anime often doesn't have happy endings. Sometimes the shit don't have endings at all. Right? And that can create this uncomfortable feeling. I remember I used to always relish in the anguish of it. Just like that little slight mini depression you get after you just finished a great show. Right? And I used to relish in that and try to make sure I kept shows lined up. So I used to just spend a whole fuck ton of time watching anime. I don't do it as much as I used to, but I spend a lot of time absorbing content around the anime and the manga series that I enjoy. Right, that's just what I do now. I still watch anime. I was watching Bleach, 1,000 Year Blood War arc earlier. I've been very excited for this because Bleach was really the anime that got me really into loving anime. I've been loving it. I've been a lifetime anime fan because I've been seeing anime since before I could read. Because I had an uncle, and my uncle used to watch like Tenchi Muyo, GXP, and shit like that, and watch all that stuff back when I couldn't even read yet. I was a little kid, and I've been a fan since then. I watched Sailor Moon and Gundam, and I ended up getting into Yu Yu Hakusho with Toonami and all these different things. But it wasn't truly until Bleach that I started trying to find websites on the internet so that I could find the subtitled episodes of a show. And all these things tying together for me. Like maybe TMI, but shit, I lost my virginity while I was watching Naruto. So, and it, so for me, that's one of those things where the anime and chill thing has just kind of been a constant for me. Find a way to integrate these ideas, these experiences, and to help people realize that you don't have to change who you are to get what you want. You have to change the way you express yourself. You have to come to a better understanding and knowledge of who you are, right? And then after coming to a better understanding and knowledge of who you are, you express yourself more honestly. And through expressing yourself more honestly, you'll realize that certain things are going to come to you that you didn't expect before. And there's ways of dealing with those experiences, dealing with those situations. And I think that's very important for us to understand. It's very important for us to keep in mind. Right? But one thing that people often think of is like, let's say we're talking about the Scorpio shit, right? Like Scorpio sun, Leo moon, Scorpio rising. Yes, I have dealt with some sage burners. I talk about them sometimes, but I ain't saying I ain't never fuck with them. I keep that to a minimum, right? Because sometimes you don't know ahead of time. Plus, I'm a nigga who walk around with like turbans and kufis and shit on, so I can't be mad at that's what I attract in women, because I do like to talk about different aspects of psychology and modern psychology and philosophy and spirituality. I talk about energy. I talk about all that shit, And since I talk about all those things, it's one of those situations for me where I will sometimes get along better with a woman who I have an ability to have conversations along those lines with. Right? But you just got to understand what comes with the territory with each type of woman you deal with. I got my toxic femininity triad, the sage burner, the Topanga, and the no limit soldier, right? All these things are things you can experience. But let me keep it going further, right? So when you're a Scorpio, typically that's associated, that's a water sign, right? But it's like the fire sign of the water signs. Intensity is the name of the game. That's extremely accurate for me. I'm a very intense person. If you listen to my videos, you can probably tell I'm a pretty intense person. Like just being somebody who gets off on being a degrader or who proudly lives a BDSM lifestyle 24/7, like you got to be a pretty intense person if you're not even really going to seek to engage with a woman sexually unless she's interested in the BDSM lifestyle that you're partaking in. To be dominant, that's very intense. But I guess I'm not the type of dominant that's like very emotional on the surface or very aggressive, but my dominance is through intensity. Like just imagine like neo soul music or PB R&B music, certain shit that I just really enjoy. Like I love listening to Frank Ocean. That's my favorite artist hands down. And then I love James Fauntleroy, Anderson .Paak, Steve Lacy, Lucky Day, Mac Ayres, and the list goes so on and so forth. All right, you got Luke James. I love neo funk. I love Thundercat. I can't believe I forgot Thundercat. Thundercat, one of my favorite artists. And one of my biggest inspirations in his ways to integrate his style of music, and his love for anime and nerd culture, blurred culture. That's really something I'm looking to do as well. That's why a lot of my videos have quote unquote have hashtag blurred pill ran on it. Because really the blurred community is who I'm going after the most as far as the demographic. So I got a group on Facebook called Brokage. It's got like 2,300 members right now. We can gain some more. And if you ever go on there on Facebook, you just add me, Mari Ball BWB, and you can also just inbox me. And if you inbox me, I'll send you a link to Brokage so you can join this public group. Most will be posting memes, anime and chill memes. If you need some memes that can help spice up your game, you could just come over to Brokage and I'm gonna share some stuff that you can share and catch the sexual attention of some women that may be on your Facebook feed who don't see you that way yet, but if they see you that way, they'll be more receptive if you approach them that way. So I got some videos on online game and shit like that too, right? Well, Brokage, there's a group that's based around blurred content, adult blurred entertainment. To me, energy conservation and integration go hand in hand. They really do. And but one thing about it is Scorpios are typically associated with intensity, sexuality, and at times a certain level of spitefulness. And I wouldn't say I'm the most spiteful person, but I will say that there are times where the way I interact with people, I do put an electric fence around my boundaries. Right? And they call that the Scorpio stinger. I looked it up and like, man, that's pretty honest. I mean, that's pretty realistic, because the truth is this. Sometimes I do have a sharp tongue with people. I might give somebody a couple of warnings. Then I may say something that's very true but very hurtful. And they may not see it coming. But that's just me. You know what I mean? That's honest. And the truth is I try to avoid dealing with people who I would feel that way with. And I also set my boundaries pretty clear, but I also try to make myself attractive for the outcome that I desire. So when you want someone to be submissive with you, you have to be a dominant individual. You want somebody to be feminine with you, you need to be a masculine individual. Right? So I created my sexual polarity quadrant to break those things down. You know, it's a lot of different things that come with the stuff that I talk about. A lot of different things. The sexual polarity quadrant. It's masculine and dominant, feminine submissive, feminine dominant, masculine submissive. Those are 4 different axes within the sexual polarity quadrant that are based on a few premises, right? That the masculine dominant, the feminine submissive, regardless of gender, is an abundance mindset. So for me, I have a lot of respect for cuckolds because they embrace the feminine submissive. I'm like, hey, they accept it. You know, and then also, what else is there? Masculine dominant, just being the dominant who has a plan and a program and a structure that you hold yourself to, and also that you set for whoever you interact with. I think that that's a very positive thing because it concentrates your dominance. It adds path, direction, and principle to your dominance in a way that keeps you from stepping over certain lines. The feminine dominant gets off on overstepping those lines. And that could go to a very negative place. But a lot of men and women are feminine dominants, right? But then you also have the masculine submissive that's like a worker, right? Right? That's more so like someone who's being transactional. And that's cooperation. That's most of human interactions flow within the dynamic of the masculine submissive. Like social conditioning, social norms. This is masculine submissive. It's an unspoken social contract about your interactions, things you should and shouldn't do. Because of the threat of violence from the other person, especially men understand this, having conversations with one another, but then also the threat of punishment from the government or the threat of social ostracization. So these are just some things I keep in mind. It's the masculine dominant, feminine submissive, feminine dominant, masculine submissive. It's the sexual polarity quadrant. So I make content and I talk about these different things. Now, one thing that people often say about Scorpios is that Scorpios are very secretive. right? But at the same time, although I can be discreet with women I deal with, I'm not a super secretive person about my lifestyle, and that's the Leo moon, right? Like sometimes when people look at this stuff, they see the inconsistencies and say it's inaccurate. Sometimes you dig a little deeper, like just like with me with the Enneagram 5. I like sex. I like engaging with a woman. I like interactions in a small group. And that's something that can recharge my battery. But when you add the 4-wing on it, it makes sense with my artistic inclinations. And then when you add the sexual subtype or instinctual variant, then that makes sense. So for me, the Leo moon and the Scorpio rising is something that does add more level of sense to my zodiac sign. So while I may not subscribe to a horoscope and look at this shit every day, there have been instances where I was dealing with women who had a certain zodiac sign, and I saw very similar behaviors from them. And I remember there's a period of time, I believe maybe 2020, I think I attracted like 8 different Aquariuses. I think most of my submissives have been Aquarians, right? And there are certain consistencies in their behaviors. And when I would watch videos online about the Scorpio and the Aquarius, like that's oftentimes how it would work in the descriptions of it. So these things would help me grow. It would also help me learn and identify these things. And I actually should be making a song called Age of Aquarius, right? So I'm gonna sample that song, Let the Sun Shine. Right? And all these things, they make some sense. Also, I'm an INTJ. I'm into Myers-Briggs Typology. Myers-Briggs Typology is pretty accurate for me. I love to watch those videos on INTJs because it's pretty accurate for me personally. Right? And you got to know that, you got your primary. So basically what INTJ is, it means that you're introverted, intuitive, thinking judger. Right? But you got to understand that there's a different stack of, I forgot the word for it, but there's stacks in there. Like you got your primary, then you got your secondary, you got your tertiary functions. This is a stack of functions, right? The stack of functions, excuse me. When I watch videos in INTJ shit, man, it's pretty accurate for me. But I think about other people that I meet. And when I think about other people that I meet, I oftentimes see some of the traits of certain types that I know, and it can help you with relationship issues because some things are just different types of people, different personality types and how they mesh, and not necessarily things that have to be inconsistencies. You don't have to live your life based off of saying, oh, I can't be with this person because they're this type, they're this sign, they're this, they're that. You don't have to just not be with the person, but you can understand certain pitfalls that can come up and set your program up and your ideology up in a way that suits those different differences, right? So you can see certain pitfalls coming ahead of time. So this is just Coach Brody. Enneagram 5 Wing 4 SX, INTJ is the architect, Scorpio Sun, Leo Moon, Scorpio Rising, and just want to touch on some of this stuff real quick. It's Coach Brody. I'm out.